All right, well, good morning. Thank you for coming to Science Seminar today. We have one more Science Seminar this semester. That'll be next week. So that'll be our last, but today is our second to last. And we have with us today Gary Keith Brubaker. Okay? And Gary Brubaker is the director of what we call the Guild Hall at Southern Methodist University. And that, as he will describe it to you, is an interface between technology and people. So that means games for most of you, yes, the virtual reality of other people, and things like this. And Gary has quite a career. He worked in the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Voyager and Galileo missions, and so he's technically up there, yes, but he still has an interest in fun things like games. And so bring all that good stuff together, and I'm sure that you'll enjoy the talk today. If you'd like to learn more about what Mr. Brubaker is doing, because he's not a doctor, he's told me that before. Yeah. Okay, but he's Mr. Brubaker, what he's doing, come and join us for lunch. We'll be in the Joyce Room, the corner cafe. And for those students who do join us for lunch, we have extra special door prizes. Yes? So if you've always thought you should come join us for lunch, but you never have, we have motivational factors here. Yeah. Right? And they are these hidden secret things contained in these boxes. Okay? So if you want to find out what's in them, okay, you'll have to come and join us for lunch to learn more about all this exciting stuff with respect to games. All right. So, without any further taking up Mr. Brubaker's time, let's give him a warm welcome.
So, get my bearings. This is mostly undergraduates, is that right? And so what majors do we have represented here today? I know we're science. Chemistry. Who's chemistry? A few chemistry. What else do we have? English. Where's English? Be proud. That's right.
Mechanical engineering.
Chemical engineering. Where are chemical engineers? All right. What else we got?
Biology.
Biology. There we go. Yes. All in the back there. Is that? I'm not sure if we can say something about that. But what else?
Business.
Business. All right. Do we have any physics? I was told maybe. Maybe? No? No? Faculty? Yeah, well, I was a physics undergrad, so I had to ask. But okay, we won't dwell on that. Who has heard of the Guild Hall? Couple. Okay, fair enough. We'll get to that later on. I will start. We are a graduate program that does games, sure, interactive technology, simulation, visualization, so forth. I have included mostly artist work and designer work because it's more visual. Each of my slides will be interspersed with some work that our students have done. Lead off with this. This is one of our recent graduates. This is, well, so there was a contest that Blizzard Entertainment had that said, what would Starbucks look like in World of Warcraft? It was a good contest. Ashley, you can see there, her name there at the bottom. Entered this was her imagination, and I liked her so much. Not only was she a winner in the contest, that they ended up hiring her, and she's now an artist on World of Warcraft. That's kind of a nice story.
Wow. She should totally put that in. Yes.
Well, so as I play slideshow karaoke here, see what I have. I think the slide was later. But I'll explain what this is. One of the things we're very, very deep into is virtual reality. We had the CTO from Oculus come and present to our students yesterday. If any of you have seen, or maybe some of you have now, it's getting more common, the Google Gears, where you put your phone and the goggles and you get the VR. That was actually, that idea was one of our alumni. He pitched it to Samsung. He was working at Samsung. They said, that's a good idea. All that's a long story. To get to this piece, when they were students, one of the things that's very hard to do is bumpy surfaces in VR. When you do it in a game that's projected on a flat monitor, there's all kinds of tricks you can use. So if you look at these surfaces of this room, like the brick and the rock and the wood and the beams, Those would all be fake 3D, not true 3D, in a typical computer game. But in virtual reality, you can't do those tricks because people can see. So this room was an experiment to see if there are some inexpensive computational ways we could do in real time to make that work. One of the, how many here, has anyone here tried any of the virtual reality? It seems like they got demos popping up all over the place now. Great. One of the things that's true is if you don't run at 90 frames a second, people throw up, which is a very hard performance limit for VR. If you drop a frame, people get sick. So performance is a big deal. All that on one side, no words either. Okay, oh, there's the agenda. So a little bit, I've spent most of my life making games. I started at, well, we'll talk about who I am. Talk a little bit about the game industry. It's interesting. There's a lot of things that people assume they know about it, but they're wrong. We'll do some questions, see how you do. And I'll talk a little bit of the Guildhall where I teach. Smart words. It's pretty. So here's some of my games. Shipped over 20 titles. I started at LucasArts, and you can see some of the games that I worked there. I've been very lucky to work on some great brands, Lord of the Rings, Lego, so forth. I then went on to a small indie developer called Stormfront, and then I went and worked for Atari, which kind of still exists, although they don't publish games under that name anymore. And then I went to teach. So let's talk about the video game industry. How many of you play video games? Oh, everybody. That's true. So, if you were to describe what does a typical gamer look like, what would be your descriptive words? What? Same loudly. Nerd. What else? American. What else would you say about them?
Humanoid?
Humanoid? How about what would you say the average age of a gamer is?
28.
Oh. 20?
Oh,
What do you say?
children.
5 to 50.
5 to 50?
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
So maybe younger. How about male, female? Male. Let's look. So there is this, right, if I'll go before I get to the actual data, this image of the unemployed, friendless, in their parents' basement, male, young man playing Call of Duty, right? We all have that in our heads. On his Xbox, no social skills. I guess that goes to nerd, maybe not nerd. And that's kind of the image we have of gamers. It turns out that is a piece of gamers, but not entirely accurate. Oh, see now, all that's set up. We have a number of alumni working at Riot who do the League of Legends, which is pretty cool. So let's talk about age. So while certainly the 18 to 35 is a pretty big slice of new games, interestingly enough, the over 50 is virtually as large. It turns out, when you kind of dig into the research and who games, if video games existed when you were a kid, you probably played video games. And so it's just a matter of time before we can say that there really isn't an age group that prefers games. So some interesting facts. Well, let's go with the question. What is the average age of a U.S. senator? It changes depending on the election. I think it's currently 68. To get to the U.S. Senate, you have to be old. I guess is a requirement. Which says, did any of these senators play games growing up? No. When senators are considering laws and legislation about interactive technology and video games, do they know anything about it? No. And that makes sense in the kind of laws you see them passing. It'll be interesting in a decade or two, that'll change. And I expect to see difference. Same kind of thing. The Obama White House is the first White House to have a video game console in the White House. So this is the first president we've had that has sat down with his children and played video games in front of the TV. Does that change how a president makes decisions? Perhaps. Okay, let's move on. Oh, this is a real nice one. Of the things that's hard to do, if any of you, the engineers have done some CAD work. Doing these organic shapes are really hard. You can't snap to the grid. It's not nice regular shapes. And so this was a project one of our students did. Okay, let's talk about gender. Let's put this one. So if you look at the percentages over the years, you see that historically, more men than women have played games, kind of as a percentage, but that is dropping. So you say, okay, well maybe that's close to what I know. Let's dig in a little deeper. We like this one though. How can you not love that stuff? It depends by what you mean gamer. And so if you look here at the console, a PC, I don't know if I have a pointer. Doesn't look like it. Those are definitely more male dominated. If you go to a game like World of Tanks, has anyone played World of Tanks? Few players. That game's 98% male. All there. But if you look into mobile, you'll see that there are more women playing than men. Does anyone know what the #1 mobile game is?
Kim Kardashian.
Candy Crush.
Kim Kardashian.
What?
Followed by Candy Crush. Followed by Clash of Clans. Yeah, it changes week to week. Clash Royale comes up there. What is it? What's the name? Chloe and what's one of the other sisters? I forget which one. Has a follow-up, which is on its way. It was for the first month. It was up #1 as well. It goes to, because there is such a strong cultural image of that young man in the parents' basement playing Call of Duty, that a lot of people who play games will say they're not gamers. For the industry, if you play more than 5 to 7 hours a week of a video game, they would call you a hardcore gamer. That's about an hour a day. Now, you know, it's interesting. I have this neighbor, and this is a little dated story, but I think it gets the point across. One of the companies we work with real closely did Words with Friends. I have a neighbor. She's a soccer mom, and she says, you know what you do, I just don't get the games. My kids play the games. I don't like them. They're just so different. They're so foreign. They're not. I see you're always on Words with Friends. Yeah, I really like Words with Friends. Well, that's a game, right? You play over an hour a day. You're a hardcore gamer. Oh, no. Words with Friends isn't a game. It's based on Scrabble, which is a game. We don't talk about it anymore. There's actually been studies done because of people don't want to associate with that nerd image. Even though they play games, will not call themselves gamers because they don't want to be associated with that. But when you dig into it, most people game in some way or another, particularly with the advent of smartphones. It's where you go. No idea what that is.
Like something PowerPoint.
Yeah.
My princess.
Okay, here's another. What's the biggest game company? EA.
Square Enix.
Square Enix? We love Square Enix. Blizzard's actually owned by Activision.
Riot?
Riot? Riot isn't even in it. Riot is owned by Tencent. Who's heard of Tencent?
Oh yeah, that's right.
100% owned. A few of you. We'll talk about Tencent. Other ideas. Largest video game company.
Nintendo?
Nintendo. Microsoft. Maybe Sony. We've thrown out all these. You're all wrong. In fact, you're all completely off the mark. See, I think. Oh, more art. Here we go. Steve.
Like a valve. Okay.
So, and if we dig in deeper to it, if you want to go by revenue, not just by number of titles sold, the largest video game company in the world is Apple, followed by Google. Turns out those mobile apps, they make a lot of money. And it's funny, I was talking to a guy at Apple. Apple, actually, most of this is great bit of trivia. Apple had a console, like a game console, like a PlayStation or Xbox. They called it the Pippin. Anyone remember the Pippin? Go look at it. I think it lasted for about a week. It was a dismal failure. They poured a lot of money into it, and no one bought it because it was awful. And so Apple said, we're never going to do games again. This is a disaster. We don't understand the market. We hate it. We're something else. iPhone launched, App Store, of course, we all know that story. And the CFO came to Apple and said, you know, we make more money on games than anything else. Perhaps we need to, get rid of the denial and just say we're a game company. And then Apple started actively courting game companies. And it was a similar thing with Google. Google imagines themselves as a very serious company. That they, making robots and solving all of the world's problems and not being evil and all that. Hey, this whole Android thing's nice, but all the money's in the games. It's not in search. Which goes to show that the market has moved in who we think of games and where we deal with this interactive technology is not completely obvious. Oops. So again, one of the things our students do is they make these concept sketches, and then they have to go build and model it with a 3D program and then put it in their game. So here's some concept work that was done. However, I've just said mobile's everything. These are slides I got from EDAR. They Game Developers Conference always do awesome video game data. They collect data like no one else. You can look here at what games made in March 2016, and it changes month to month, of course. But you can see that there's still a lot of money to be made in console gaming. Now these are individual titles versus whole companies, right? So Call of Duty is of course an Activision title, Blizzard title, does very well, as is, I guess, World of Warcraft. And you can see the big, in this month, mobile games for Candy Crush and Clash of Clans. Still, $1 billion. That's a pretty good revenue stream. All these Kim Kardashian, Clash of Clans, Candy Crush, all of them have done $1 million weeks. Again, not too bad. It's actually, I guess we can talk here as League of Legends, talk a little bit about Tencent. If you go for money and market share, Apple and Google, of course, at the top of the game. Number 3 is Tencent. Somebody said it's a U.S. thing. Tencent is a Chinese company who basically started cloning American companies. So they have the Chinese equivalent of like a Twitter and Facebook Messenger and all the social stuff. They started a social media company and made a lot of money in China and actually all of Asia, then started buying game companies. One of the game companies they bought was Riot, which is out in California, but they own it 100% now. And it's interesting to me that most Americans have never even heard of them, even though they are the largest traditional game company in the world. So we talk about how big is the game industry? And there's different ways we can answer that question. So one of the questions we can talk is billions of dollars. So you can see how. Well, let me ask. This is good. This is like, okay, this is my sons are in high school, right for the SATs. They do a lot of this. Looking at this chart, what would you comment on? What does this tell you about the game industry?
Online stuff.
It's growing.
Online gaming.
Online. Well, can you say that the online that this is online?
Well, because back in the 90s, you didn't have all the online gaming. It didn't come out until later on.
Yeah. What else can we see?
About when did Steam come out? Wasn't that like around the 2010?
So
That's the
Steam. Let's see.
summer sale.
So
Not so.
I was just looking. I was actually surprised. I got a badge on Steam for being what was it? A 10-year, 15-year Mac.
Service?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Because it was Steam. We actually had one of our graduation speakers was one of the beginners of Steam. Anyone know it was first offered on Steam? It wasn't Half-Life. It was Half-Life. It was Counter-Strike mods. They wanted people to be able to download mods that people had made to Half-Life, particularly Counter-Strike. And because those were done, the mods, a lot of them, Blue Shift and stuff, are done by Gearbox, who's also one of our neighbors there in Dallas. One of the other companies in Dallas was id, of course, of Doom and Quake and all these story titles. And one of the business guys over at id called up Valve and said, hey, or maybe it was the other way around, but said, hey, we'd like to put our old back catalog, our old Doom and Quake up on Steam. It seems like it's a common market. You've already got Half-Life players. We don't think they'll probably sell a lot, maybe a couple hundred copies, but hey, it's digital, it's free, we'll put them up there. And then the first week, they sold hundreds of thousands of copies, right? So the rest, as they say, is history. So one of the things you notice is here at the end, it doesn't seem to be growing much anymore. You might say, well, that's kind of weird. I kind of would think games would go. And why did they go down in 2012 and 2013? They've kind of picked up back a little bit. So one of the things I haven't told you about this is because of who Valve is. They don't report their data. This does not have Steam data on it. So this does not include Steam games. It's also US only.
That's probably.
And again, this doesn't include a lot of... It includes some online storefronts, but not some others. It also doesn't include some of the mobile, again, because they don't break it out in their financials. So this explains some of what we're not seeing here. It also does not have US. There's some other things, like this is perhaps a little feature. We can see from 2004 to 2005, we had this little dip. That's another dip. When you think it's small, maybe we don't worry about it. Actually, that one was completely predictable. Anyone want to guess why? Yeah, it's a new console generation. When there's a new console coming out, people tend not to buy games, because why buy a game for a console that's going to be obsolete in 6 months? And so there's this kind of saving up. And then you see there's a nice jump, right after the new console takes off. Yeah, like a sword with that. I'm sure you can see that.
It's a chain.
I think these are, actually, I thought it was changed too. You can see it stops. Those are actually like little razor blades.
Is that an emoticon on the shoulder?
No, I think
It looks just like a delta.
yeah. So it said take Steam off. Well, here's if we could. We don't know how much money Steam is making, right? But if you just go on numbers sold, Steam does release that data. You can see they're doing pretty good. Although again, we have to take this with a grain of salt, because when do you buy games on Steam?
Summer sale.
When they're on sale, right? I don't think I've ever paid full price for anything on Steam. I more games than I know what to do with. Games. So here's another thing. And this is true in mobile. This is true in games. Most games downloaded on a phone or on Steam are never even installed or opened, because you either get it for free or on Steam you get it on sale. Does anyone have games that bought? I certainly do. Games that bought on Steam and then just $2 and then a few of you. I know it's embarrassing. like a digital magpie. A little bit more art. It's really hard. You know, a lot of these companies are private. A lot of them are international. They don't have the reporting rules. Getting at this, but this begins to show again. This breaks it out by genre, but it is worldwide. And so you can see in 2015, which is actual data, the others predicting, so maybe not as accurate. If you add up all those columns together, that would be the total worldwide revenue for games. It's a big market. There's a lot of people that are in it. And of course, this doesn't include all the other things you can do with game-like technology. Simulation, educational software, so forth.
That's a big factor.
Yeah, it's a big factor. So this is at the other end. I should actually do that. I should actually do the concept art to the actual student art. So this is one of the characters in one of our games. Put up. So we do at the Guildhall, and actually in game developers, these are the 4 major buckets of the actual developers. The company who did this public data went out, so this data, as you can see, is 2013, a little dated, but things have only gone up from here, so it gives you kind of an idea. I always think this is kind of a classic shot showing, I always like to show the wireframe somehow makes it cooler. What's up with that? This is kind of an interesting exercise one of our artists do. I know it's more perhaps a technical group than an artistic group. But one of the skills of an artist is being able to see something and accurately reproduce it. So this image on the left is a photograph, and the image on the right is a student had to freehand draw that in Photoshop. So they couldn't scan it, they couldn't trace it. It's just here's the 8.5 by 11 photo. Here's my tablet, my Photoshop, go. That's the whole thing. In fact, the faculty will say, it's funny, the way you test for cheating is they'll take the image that's drawn and do a diff to the photograph, and there's telltale signs you can see if they traced or scanned. It'll be too close. So it's just amazing to me how they pull that off. Basically, all this is to say interactive technology games is growing at an exponential rate. It used to be a big deal to say we made more money than movie and music combined. Movie industry has been basically stagnant. Their revenues and their profits have been flat for a long time. The music revenue continues to slide, much to their unhappiness. Whereas video game revenue, as you saw, it's still exponentially growing. It gets a little to the history of the Guildhall. Well, actually, before we go there, this will frame it nicely. Games are developed in very few cities in the world. And the reason is the same reason that movies are made in very few places in the world, and Hollywood has such prominence in that industry, is because you tend to be project-based work. You work on a game, and then it's done, and you want to go your next game. You need a couple of guys in a room to have an idea, and they maybe take 6 months to come up with the idea, and so you have this team. You're completely ADD here. Actually, what's of a game team, what's the average size to make one of these games like Candy Crush or 5, 50, 12? We've got a whole order of magnitude difference there. So if you're talking Call of Duty, you're talking like 500 people. That's real developers. That doesn't count all the support staff. You're talking Clash of Clans. You're probably talking 100. It's a lot of people. Candy Crush, maybe. You're getting down into the 20s. These are big things. We think because they're free, they're 99 cents, must not take a lot of effort. Not true. But that said, so people work on a project and then they come off, and so people move companies a lot, much like, if you're an actor, you might work at Universal or 20th Century Fox, you move around. Because of that, cities like to have lots of game companies in them so employees can move around. It's good for the employees, it's good for the companies. So that said, we know there's only a few of them. Where are most games made in the U.S.? What cities? Dallas, I like that. You said that because we're from Dallas.
It's like Dallas, I think LA is one.
LA's number 1. I will say Dallas, Austin is number 2. I'll put us together. You might say, oh, that's kind of cheating. Not so much.
Texas is too big.
I can get from my campus to, we'll say, the UT campus in Austin in less time than I can drive across half of LA. Part of that's traffic. Part of it's just LA is geographically large, and so by the time you count Orange County with places like Blizzard and North LA and Insomniac, it's about the same area you're looking at. Even if you don't play that trick, if you separate Austin and Dallas, they become 3 and 4, with number 2 being Seattle. Of course, Microsoft and Nintendo are there. And after that, there's not so much. There used to be a thriving game development community in Chicago. That's mostly died. There used to be one in Northern California around San Francisco. That's mostly dead. There's a few corporate headquarters there. Occasionally you'll see games and they'll list the companies. New York, those are financial offices. No one actually develops there. Point being, and we don't do as good a job as advertising as Austin, because everyone always thinks Austin games. We have as many companies, we do as many things. When the Guild Hall was originally started, the university had an endowment, some money from a donor, the Hearts, very generous. They said, do something new. And so we were casting around. I wasn't there yet, but SMU was casting around for what kind of new program should they start that nobody else has. And in our journeys, we ran across some of the local game developers, and they said the same thing. It's harder to get good people than investment. Turns out being skilled at making these kind of interactive technologies is hard. You have to have pretty deep education. It's growing. There's a lot of money, people are willing to invest, but we can't hire people. So this is just kind of this idea. Actually, I think this is data. We just had another career fair. We didn't have quite that many this year, but we were close. It's always amazing to see who comes to our career fair, because we have companies you would expect, like Activision Blizzard. In fact, they usually do different. The team hiring for Call of Duty is different than the team hiring for the Blizzard games. Respawn was there. These kind of big game companies. Gearbox comes, of course, they're local, Insomniac. But we also have Halliburton often comes, or also other companies, because again, they're looking for that same kind of technology. This is a kind of a neat slide. It shows kind of how the art and science comes together of it all. Most people are pretty familiar with the top 2 images, a completely rendered 3D character or the wireframe. However, what most people are not familiar with is how do you map a 2D texture to that 3D image. And the way to think about this is, if you're wrapping a gift for a birthday or something of your friend, if it's a regular object, a box, that's pretty easy to figure out. Unless you're me, I can never get all of them. But imagine that it's a complex shape. How do you fold that paper over it? It's going to want to stretch in some parts, and it's going to get all bunched up in others, because it's not, and it's a mess. And it gets even worse. So if you take this 2D image, and you want to map it to that 3D, you have that same problem. Parts of that image will get stretched, and parts of it will get squashed, and of course that won't look good. And so students go through this exercise which is called unwrapping, where they will take every polygon on that 3D model and map it to a 2D surface, which will map to the texture that gets put on it. And so you can kind of see things like there's this, I don't know if that's a drill or a shield. It looks like a drill. It's probably a shield. Maps to this portion right here. That's pretty easy because it's kind of has these nice axes of symmetry. Faces are always hard. You can see how the face has gotten all stretched out so that when it's put onto the figure, it will compress exactly the right amount to look unstretched to the original art. The other thing that's particularly tough about this and makes it kind of a mathematically interesting problem, of course you don't have an infinite amount of space for textures. These things tend to be large nowadays, very detailed. is you don't want to waste any space. Like you can see there's an empty space here that doesn't map to anything. This student did a fabulous job. There's very little wasted space in this. But it's a packing problem, right? How do you take all these different polygons and pack them into the smallest space without any wasted space? I see the math. Doctor going, yeah, that's the kind of problem I can think my teeth into. And it turns out because it's hard, there are programs that will do this, but they're not very good at it because, so again, we'll go to math. So this is an engineering group. It's, you know, an NP complete problem, so it's tough. You can't just do it. So that's usually you take the program, get some hints, and then you kind of figure out and do a better job. So anyhow, obviously I'm here at the Guildhall. Talk a little bit where, as I've said, you've already heard a little bit of our history. Industry came to us and said, we want people, we want to hire people, we can't find people who are qualified. That sounds like a perfect place for a university to set in. We did it a little differently. There's a lot of schools now, it seems like every school spun up a game program because it's very exciting, shows well in brochures, I guess. What we did is we went out to the industry and found people who were actually making games. That's how I got into it. I was working, what was I working on? I think I was working on a game that went with the last Matrix movie. Enter the Matrix or something game. It was, if you played it, I'm sorry. It was very regrettable. We had a great license, but the game was, I just did tech. No sign on that game. Actually, I've had some students tell me it was their favorite game, so I shouldn't be perhaps a judge of taste.
We're programmers, we judge taste all the time.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why programmer art is a common joke in the industry. That's like the worst thing. If you say it's programmer, that's the worst insult you can give any piece of artwork. Oh, yes. So, the university went out and sought people who had the degrees and the things the university wants to become an accredited program, and brought them people who were not traditionally academics and did not see themselves spending a career in the academy, like myself, and said, we want to do this new innovative thing. Many of our competitors went the other way. They took some faculty who said, hey, you're in computer science or you're in engineering and you like video games, certainly you could teach a course on video games, right? Sure. So a little bit different genesis. So we're academics, we like to take metrics, statistics. It's very hard to find any large company or any significant title that's had many people on it that one of our alumni haven't worked on. One of the things we do is we send out alumni surveys. We get about 80% response rate, which the faculty would go, yeah, that's amazing. That's great to have that kind of contact with your alumni. One of the questions we asked, are you in a lead position or have or responsible for the design of the game you're working on? And within 4 years of graduation, 40% say, yep, that's me. One of the other things, I don't know if anyone has looked at job postings for game companies. Has anyone done that? A few of you? What do they always say?
Like 6 years experience, 2 ship tiles, or some ridiculous thing.
Yeah, they all say, we want this much experience, number of years in the industry, and this many ship titles, which is kind of this chicken and egg, right? If you're in, you can stay in. If you're not in, how do you get in? We really kind of saw our mission is to bridge that gap. We also poll the companies that hire our students and say, what do you think our degree's equivalent to industry experience? How many ship titles, how many years, common feedback, you can see there. All of our students are required to make games. Amazing to me, some of our competitors, they talk about making games, but the students never make games. We start in small teams of 4, we go to 8 and then 16. This is one of our capstone games, some images here. And I think, I do. Is YouTube going to work if I try this?
I would think so.
Probably.
Let's hope, right? When you're on a strange computer, some of these things are not obvious.
If YouTube doesn't work here, I'm kind of concerned on how I get YouTube at my dorm room.
Yeah. So I'll show you first one of our capstone games called Inoa. It just won first place at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. About 8,000 game developers come together, so we're real proud of it. And hopefully we'll have sound. Yes, we're big.
The fact that it's not free.
There should be audio yet or not?
Yeah, we should. We could sing along.
Yeah, there's a big knob in there.
Oh, there we go.
A big knob.
So this is done on Unreal 4. One of the new features is what they call PBR. I'll wait. Actually, you can go download it if you go Google it. One of the interesting things, this is one of the first, oh, yes, cancel. There we go. And then, do this, close this. It uses photorealistic photon-based rendering, they call, so it's hard, it was a little hard to see here. But all that water and fire was based on physically accurate models. Typically those are faked-in games. It's a little more expensive computationally. It's one of the big new headline features of Unreal 4. And Epic was very grateful. They featured us in their blogs for being some of the students who were really pushing that technology forward and using it. To be honest, we had to kind of work through it, but it was a good experience for our students. Let's see, what else have we got? Let's do this one. I say I'm running a little long here. Another one of our capstone games. This is more of the idea that this is something for a younger audience. Kids game, if you will. Slides. Okay. Yeah, so we can end there. Let's end with the videos. We're good.
For questions yet for our speaker? You have a question for him? Yes.
I imagine to get everyone interested in stuff, do you guys have like a concentrated like program or art and music part for just games, or do you guys like stretch out like to the art department of SMU and the music department?
Here we're integrated. We have 4: programming, art, design, and production, the business side of it. Again, this is one of the ways we're different than a number of universities. We have hired faculty from all those disciplines, put them in one building, our building, with our students. So we do a lot of stuff with education and engineering and art. We are our own department, our own unit. So our faculty live what they teach. Being cross-discipline, work together. It's pretty cool.
How hard is it to like get into the program for a master's degree?
How hard is it to get in? So we're a master's degree. We expect people to come in with basic skills in there. So it's honestly more based on your portfolio. Obviously, we're a master's degree, so you have to have a minimum GPA, undergraduate degree. But it really comes down to the strength. I mean, we're looking for talent, right? And so that's a little hard to say. You know, it's not as easy as a GPA to quantify.
You mentioned engineers. How does engineering necessarily go with video games?
Well, there's huge parts, right? So not only is the computer science and programming, if you look at certainly any of the visualization problems, they're almost always solved first in games. But it also goes like that game Inoa, right? Turns out simulating fire and water really accurately, besides looking really pretty, is a useful thing in lots of skills. So let me tell you a great thing. What some of our students did for Halliburton, it was a few years back, if you remember, we had the Gulf oil spill. Is they built a training environment for Halliburton, and basically it's a 3D. They did it on Unreal. It's the oil rig, and it's a training thing, and so people have to run through it before they can go out to the actual platform. And in the simulation, things start to go wrong. So they have to know what lever to pull, what valve to close, to prevent the well from blowing up. And it turns out, when you do the research, doing that in the 3D virtual environment and just creating muscle memory, this is where I turn left before I turn right, and then the switch is in the upper right hand of the panel. Watching a video, looking at that in a map is nowhere near as good a training to build that quick response time as doing it in a 3D virtual reality experience.
What area out of those do you primarily specialize in?
So my 2 big ones are design and programming. But I've done a little bit of all of them, honestly. Many of our faculty, as I say, we have a very, very talented faculty. All of them have shipped titles. Some of them have shipped hundreds of titles. Well-known. It's amazing. So a lot of cross-disciplinary people.
Okay, final question here before we adjourn to lunch. I want to give a final question.
I'm interested in game psychology. Actually, I'm interested in how technology influences sociology, psychology. Do you guys deal with that at all in your program? Probably not, since it seems to be more.
Actually, we do. It's a big part of design, but it's also, we work, one of our biggest collaborators is the psychology department, working on immersion, and particularly one of the things is there's a point, if you get the immersion past a certain point where people really believe they're there, the learning in that environment skyrockets. So whether you're teaching basic chemistry to kids or complex things to graduate students, getting past that immersion is crucial. I will say, also, appreciate you for coming. Everyone, I think I have a cup, one of the red cups there, so feel free to take one if you want. And also, if you're more interested in the program, we have a few brochures. Not enough for everybody, but if you're interested, feel free. And thank you for having me out.
All right. That was fun, huh?
I didn't time myself well. I didn't get to the VR.